Welcome to Behind the Business. I'm Faheem Savja, and on every episode, we go beyond the business plans and discover the real life and untold stories of today's entrepreneurs. It's time for the people behind the business. Let's get into it. All right, Rahim, thanks so much for coming, man. I appreciate it. I'm excited to learn so much about you and your background. Starting Serv, I'm going to put you in a spot, all right? Okay.
Let's do it.
So you're completing your master's, working full time, and you're like, all right, I'm going to start something of my own. After having done so much time in school and so much time in a full-time environment with Badminton Canada.
Yeah.
How did it happen?
Long story short.
Yeah.
It came, I think, like we spoke about earlier,
Yeah.
it's kind of out of passion,
Yeah.
It came out of really identifying a gap. While, like you said, I was working on my master's, I was doing my thesis portion of it,
Yeah.
and working with Badminton Canada as a
Yeah.
contractor.
Yeah.
And while I was doing that simultaneously, I realized that, I was hired by Badminton Canada to pretty much translate all their documents and website, and they didn't have social media, so it was pretty much launching social media as well, and working alongside their vendors, marketing vendors, and whatnot, and pretty much trying to translate the website and their campaigns, and after that I identified gap with other national sporting organizations. They're called other sports organizations in Canada.
Yeah.
And they pretty much had the same issue where their website wasn't translated. They were trying to launch their social media. So it came pretty much out of, just chasing the market in a way, right? And chasing where I realized that, I was hired by Badminton Canada to fulfill something that was important. And I knew that other, NSOs and I'm sure other institutions needed that. So it kind of came out of identifying the gap and also just like out of passion. I love doing it. I as you know, and I think that's when we met also.
Yeah, for sure.
Back in Ottawa, and
we met in Ottawa, man.
My thesis investigated, legislative multiculturalism and second generation hybrid identities, and what I used was the phenomenological case study of Ismaili Muslims in Canada.
Okay.
Especially Ismailis in Quebec, and from there, when I was working with Badminton Canada, I pretty much realized that I had a passion for language.
Yeah.
I wanted to utilize my bilingualism, which was weird because I'm being from Montreal. You don't realize how much it's ingrained in you.
Yeah.
And how natural it is, and how much of an asset it is. I would say, outside of Quebec. I was able to kind of identify a time in my life where I could take the risk.
Yeah.
To kind of start my own business, see perhaps where it led type of thing.
Yeah.
And I was at my parents' place in Montreal, so I was financially secure in a sense. I didn't have a mortgage or rent to pay, so I'm like, this is a great opportunity to jump right in. And,
It's interesting, like you mentioned, obviously, trying something new for the first time, right? And I think that you and I talked earlier, and you had mentioned that now that you're doing Serv and it's a translation agency, it's really blown up. Like now you have tons of clients and you're doing really great work, but it didn't start that way, right? You mentioned you had partners and you weren't really a translation agency to start?
No, so pretty much how we started, it was, now we're going into our 9th year. So
unreal,
it's crazy to say, but thank you. As a translation agency, going into its 9th year, it's been a hell of a process. It's been a hell of a,
for sure,
of a journey, I would say. But the first year per se was where I was in partnership with 3 other associates in a way that we were trying to provide a full turnkey marketing service in a sense, and we realized like we were trying to reach beyond our skills, but also beyond what the market needed in a sense. And I was doing translation on the side as a freelancer. Like, and beyond the contracting with Badminton Canada. And I was getting requests from companies for translation, and, I incorporated, Serv became an incorporation. So at first it was like a design agency / web website development plus
Yeah.
translation. So we try to, do it all type of thing,
Yeah. But it was a bit too much.
It was a bit too much, and we realized, man, that we had to stick to our guns, to where the money was at.
Yeah.
90% of what we brought in that year was translation
It
business.
was you. That's you.
And that's all it was all my department. So, my associates realized also they were doing this part time. I was in it. That was a difference also between me and my partners, is that at that time, was that I was in full time. I was in, both feet in, and I was an entrepreneur. I actually, Badminton Canada became one of my clients.
Yeah, nice.
From contracting with them to them actually becoming a client.
Yeah.
So I think that first year was quite an experience, and it was a learning experience.
Yeah.
That you have to stick to what makes you special and what makes you different.
Yeah.
Right.
Not a lot of people go through like a company split up within their first year.
Yeah.
That's crazy, right? And not necessarily because like the company isn't doing well. You just realized your strengths, right? You knew up front that, okay, working with these guys isn't really going to make a lot of sense for me, and I'm going to go down this path and do my own thing. Was that like amicable? Was it difficult? Was it awkward?
No, because first it was like 3 very close people from my network.
Yeah.
That
Okay.
I just brought together.
Yeah.
One was a designer, one was a website developer, and one was a social media coordinator.
Yeah.
And they were doing that full time, and
Yeah.
they were doing this as a side gig at first, and
Mhm.
it was, since they were my friends, it was easier
Yeah.
to just be like, hey, it's not working out, let's just end this in a friendly, very amicable way.
Yeah.
It wasn't there weren't any strings attached, or there wasn't any like animosity involved or anything of a sort. It was very friendly, and I'm still happy because we ended up working together. Like the designer, I ended up sending him some work at the end of the day, and he ended up sending me work, and we ended up collaborating in different angles and different ways at the end, right? So everything happens for a reason.
Facts.
Mhm.
Such facts, man. Honestly, that's so important to say, because it really did happen for a reason for you, right?
Mhm.
I really loved why, and I didn't know this till recently. I really loved why you picked the name Serv for a translation. I was like, I don't know why I never knew that. So like, tell me about that. Like, why did you pick Serv?
Yeah. So I, as you know, my badminton background, I was lucky to have competed on the national and international stage in my youthful days.
Still youthful, bro. You're good, man. You're good. Come on now.
The good old days, as they say, right? The golden days, and I was lucky to have been coached by some of the best coaches Canada has ever seen.
Yeah.
And I was able to absorb that and share that from serving in different international development programs. In the Somali community and in our community, right? And I was able to go to the far reaches of northern Pakistan in the Hunza Valley to share something I'm very passionate about.
Which was badminton.
Which is badminton. It was as a camp for a month throughout Pakistan, in 5 different cities, and it was a coaching program to coach the coaches, and also a badminton program for 4 weeks throughout with different age groups and skills. And then twice I was able to go to the Aga Khan academies in Mombasa in Kenya. Yeah. So the sense of service has always been part of my life, part of my family's and I would say traditions. Yeah. So the sense of service and as a badminton player, when you start a rally, you start with a serve. And translation services, right? At the end of the day, it's a service. So
nailed it.
How Serv came to be was, I would say, an amalgamation of all of those 3 things.
Yeah. It's really cool you brought up the story about your trip to northern Pakistan. And the reason why I say that is because I think having seen you and been friends with you for a really long time, like that experience you had there seemed like it really shaped who you were.
It really did.
Right? Like you and I talk about that experience so often.
We do.
Right? What was it about that trip that was like, okay, this is going to change my perspective on the way I see the world?
Totally. It was the opportunity.
Yeah.
Honestly, you don't realize how much you get by giving. Just simply. I think I was provided a platform to share something that really made me different, but I was able to excel at, and know, and theorize, and put into practice, and care, and collaborate with my sponsors, and have over 400 students, athletes, part of a program that knowing that it kind of comes from the Golden Jubilee Games from 2016 also.
Okay.
Where that kind of it comes from there, where the program was to kind of build a wider scale coaching, I would say, institution.
Sure.
And I was able to be part of that and share my background in badminton, and it really shaped me. It really made me. It was my first big opportunity to serve.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what made me realize that, there's and it was it was a sweet spot where it was like I was done school, I was starting Serv.
Yeah.
It was.
You had started Serv at that point?
I had started Serv. I think Serv was at its infancy at the year 1 or 2.
So you had just started the business, and then
just
you're like, I'm
started
going to
the
go to
business.
northern Pakistan
Straight up.
and deliver these camps.
Yeah, and I put Serv on pause, and I've done that 3-4 times so far, and it's been a blessing in disguise, to be honest. And it, like you said, it shaped me because it provided me with a sense of opportunity, but also a sense of responsibility. Yeah, that it was a sense of a duty to give back, to have been provided a chance to know badminton and excel in it, and to share that and teach it, right, and share that best practice, because I think that's what makes the AKDN, which is in part with whom we work with. That's what makes the AKDN so great as well, right? Is sharing best practices.
It's really cool. We hear a lot about athletes, whether they have gone down the professional route or have been professionals in the past, who have then started businesses. Mm-hmm. Has that world for you, because you were a professional athlete at a very elite level in Canada, for badminton? So like now that you've left that world, other than to teach, which you're still doing, how has that impacted your business life? Like, do you think that there's a correlation there?
Of course, 100%. The sense of perseverance. Yeah. The sense of persistence. Yeah. Being able to never give up. Yeah. And it comes from a very it comes from within. Yeah. It comes from who you are. How far are you willing to stretch your passion? Yeah. Your need to succeed. It's crazy. Your need to succeed. It was really a sense of patience as well, right? You have to be patient when you're an entrepreneur, and know where not to stretch yourself thin, mm-hmm. and where to stretch yourself a little thinner. Then be able to kind of know where to put a little more efforts towards. For sure. And know where you can collaborate with other partners to make your product better. I haven't, for instance, my website. Like I've never been a very big web developer, or like somebody that knows his way around websites. But I've always collaborated with the best web developers. Got it. And that was something that allowed me to have a great website, mm-hmm. From day one. And share what I do best. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's cool also to see you transition from athlete to entrepreneur to now like the latest adventure in the world of Rahim, being a father. Yeah. Right. How has that transition been? Because I know having a business and having a child, people often say they're kind of similar, because they're both really demanding, and you're trying to grow figuratively and literally both things. How's that been? Both exciting and scary at once. Yeah. It's been a realization that, before you had this financial, I would say, freedom to kind of be like, okay, you have yourself to worry about at the end of the day, but now you have another being to literally care about, make sure that tomorrow there's no stress when it comes to that. But I think what allowed me, after 9 years and having my son in my 9th year of business, has provided me this sense of motivation. No way. Yeah. It really kind of like it kind of made it in a sense where I grew some confidence in my business and my brand and who I am as a business and as a brand.
Right.
And we're a boutique agency. At the end of the day, we're still lean. We're still trying to grow, but strategically in a sense where we have some very good partners, but at the same time, we're not trying to expand beyond our capacities.
Yeah, for sure.
We like to keep be hands-on every project. Mostly all my team members are involved in all projects in a sense.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know. I think it was very important for me to know that I have a son to worry about. I have to put some bread on the table tomorrow, right?
So the added push.
Yeah,
it's not just
a spark, some sort of sense of spark. Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
Totally.
It's also really fun to see you kind of grow into this person that values spending time with your kid too, right? I think a lot of people take different paths. Some people will be more present down the road when their child is older, or will be more present up front and focus on their business later, right? But you've kind of done both. It's like you're managing all that at the same time, right?
Yeah, it's been cool. I'm so proud to say that Elias, at 10 months old, has been to 8 countries already.
Crazy. Crazy.
We've really taken advantage of this year.
Yeah.
We went on a trip to Scandinavia, and then went down south to the US, and there's been a sense of adventure now with Elias as well, where it's like we're living life through his eyes and discovering the world again in a different way.
Yeah.
And it's been exciting for me and my partner Zara to really be able to discover the world again through his eyes.
That's unreal. It's fun because when you're becoming an entrepreneur or you're trying to grow your business, you want to make sure to have all these life experiences as well and not have to shut the door to everything else,
of
right?
Course.
So I want to mention this because I know you did this. Like, I know you're going on all these trips, but that doesn't mean that you're not working. Like, you're on. Like, yes. I remember the stories of you, on your honeymoon?
Yeah.
Yo, tell me that story, man.
Man, Zara still...
Sorry if I'm going to get you in trouble again.
No, it's okay, but you know how it is. Yeah, on our honeymoon, literally, we... while Zara was at Aquafit, I was working in our hotel room, grinding it out 4 out of the 7 days.
Oh man,
it was unbelievable because that's what it takes to be an entrepreneur. Also, right, is knowing that there's no days off, even when you want to take a day off. Especially in the translation world, in my industry, it's crazy where you can say no to one project and you could never hear from that client again. And that's scary, right? So there's that sense of responsibility and a sense of partnership that I take very seriously as well when it comes to my partnersps, and I think I did what I had to do, right?
Yeah, seriously.
Recently when we were in Europe, the WNBA project came on our desk, and we just couldn't say no.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And where was I? I was in Oslo, and we had a museum tour the next day. And I knew that if I took on this project, I would miss this tour, but I had to do it.
Yeah. I
missed it, but at the end of the day, it kind of led to being able to build a partnership and be able to grow with that partner. Right?
Unreal.
Today.
The idea of partnership is really important. You bring that up, and I think it's I'm glad you did, because especially in your world, you've been able to work with some really cool companies, some really cool brands on some awesome projects like the WNBA one, and I'm sure there are others. What's been the coolest project you've worked on?
It's hard to say. I don't know if there's been the coolest project, but I think what was cool, what's cool and rewarding, I would say, is seeing my work in the wild, in a sense. When you see your work, like for instance, we work with different consumer packaged goods and brands, and namely Butterball, and all the turkeys in Canada are a lot of them are Butterball turkeys, right? So when you see your work on the back of a label, or in
the grocery store, you're walking by,
exactly, right? It's cool to see, and everything's bilingual, so that French side came from our team, right?
Right.
And same thing with the Barilla pasta, the blue box.
So cool. Yeah.
That's known around the world. And when it comes to the Canadian market, we do all the the translation for that company. And
So cool.
it's so cool seeing that. And like, well, I saw one time one of the buses in Montreal that had signage on it from Skip the Dishes.
Yeah.
And we've worked on that campaign in Quebec.
Like, I did that.
I
That's
did that,
me.
right? Because that was pretty cool. Because that was interesting because we had this a marketing agency reach out to us, and they were like, we have a bunch of slogans and campaign assets and promotional material that we need translated, but it needs to be localized.
Yeah.
There's a lot of terms and sayings that you can't apply in the French market.
Right.
And I remember this one particularly was "Bye Felicia." There's no such thing as "Bye Felicia" in Quebec, right? In French. So I had to, I would say, localize it and use, nuances and colloquials, from Quebec, right?
So we were thinking about doing this podcast, and one of the things that came up about the industry is that, and like any industry right now, everyone's going through a tech change, and that tech change is generally referred to AI because everyone's going through it, right?
Mm-hmm.
For you in the translation industry,
Yeah.
how big of a deal is AI?
Massive.
How much is it going to help you, hurt you? What's the next step?
It's been massive, and it's going to be bigger and bigger.
Okay.
But I think what makes a good translator always needed is the sense of localization we provide, right?
Exactly.
Is being able to say what you're trying to say in the right way locally.
In that market.
Right? How to know how to, it's not just about translating word for word, not at all. Actually, that's what I would say a lot of AI and a lot of machine translation generates is word for word translation. Obviously, it's getting better and better, but there's always that sense of post-editing necessity.
Yeah.
It's always necessary to kind of review, I would say, generated content.
Sure.
Obviously, when it's more technical, it could be helpful. But in general, when you're localizing, when you're translating for a new market, you're trying to get the essence of the meaning and produce that.
Yeah. Versus the literal meaning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can't do that. Sometimes by saying that, you can mean the opposite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Just like there ain't no "Bye Felicia."
There ain't no "Bye Felicia,"
in
right?
Quebec,
Like,
yeah.
goodbye, Felicia.
Yeah. Just same
There is
thing.
there is none.
Yeah,
Right? That's the
fair
thing.
enough.
It's a saying, right? It's a term, right? So, and that's what makes my work also very fun and exciting,
exactly.
right? Is trying to find these nicks and crannies, and and trying to find the right way of saying, and you don't say the same thing, the same way depending on the audience, right?
For sure.
Whether you're speaking on the back of a label or of a website or social media, right?
Yeah.
I always tell my partners there's 5 ways of saying one thing in French, and there's 1 way of saying 5 things in English.
Yeah, wow.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's
That's
crazy. And there's also French requires 30% more content, more words. So when it comes to marketing, when it comes to being able to produce advertisement, every word matters. Right?
Yeah.
So I think that's where our skill and our I would say our bilingual nature comes in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool to see now that Serv is 9 years old, plus growing. A lot of small businesses, frankly, don't make it past the first few years.
Mm-hmm.
I think the drive that you've brought to your business is the reason why it's here today.
Mm-hmm.
Is that drive related to your family being entrepreneurs?
Nailed it. Totally. I come from an entrepreneurial background.
Yeah.
My parents have. It's funny, but I've grown up pretty much behind a counter of a convenience store.
Yeah.
In downtown Montreal.
Yeah.
We were known as the Quickie Mart of downtown. And that sense of customer service, that sense of relentless approach to getting shit done.
Yeah.
And working, whether it's the nights or weekends, it's what it takes.
Yeah.
It's what's necessary. My parents really instilled in me this passion of entrepreneurship and working for your own merit.
Yeah.
And my mom was a nurse. My father's a carpenter. Both of them had nothing to do with convenience stores.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But they themselves saw a gap in the market,
Yeah.
and 43 years later, my mom is still there.
No
working, nights and weekends, and my father too. It's still a small family business downtown Montreal.
No way.
Yeah.
Shout out auntie and uncle.
Yeah. Honestly, they really are my my source of inspiration.
Right.
100%.
Yeah. It's cool to see now that you also have your own family,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, do you find yourself now thinking, man, I learned a lot from my parents, but I also learned a lot about how I want to do things differently?
Yeah, 100%. Their generation, their era was completely different from ours.
For sure.
I think being able to use tools and resources
Yeah.
that I don't think they had,
Yeah.
at their disposal so easily.
For sure.
Being able to learn from I think one thing that also I learned from a lot is that sense of learning from their mistakes.
Yeah, of course.
It's,
Of course.
I kind of learned that obviously there's a sense of sacrifice when you have your own business,
For sure.
but I've learned that it's very important to keep that balance, especially when you have a family.
For sure.
Being able to sit around the table, have dinner with your family every day, sometimes takes priority over
Right.
business, even if it's necessary. Even if, especially, the last year,
Yeah.
where Zara was on mat leave, and I kind of used the sense of, not that I didn't enjoy not being a little less busy when I wasn't like
Yeah.
searching for new business in
For
a
sure.
sense, but I kind of prioritize running to Elias
Yeah.
right after my work day in a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, instead of like putting in more hours for business
Yeah.
development or R&D or whatnot.
We were talking to a few other people who've been on this podcast and their parents as well, and they've mentioned here that while being an entrepreneur is flexible, and it's helpful to be flexible when you have children,
Mm-hmm.
it's doesn't mean that you're working less,
Not at all.
right? Like, I'm sure you may be hanging out with Ilias for a little while, but then you're right back at it,
Exactly.
probably at random hours.
Bro, the grind is real.
Facts.
The grind is real, and being an entrepreneur and might seem very sugar-coated in a sense,
Yeah.
but
It often does look that way.
man, it's you see the tip of the iceberg
Yeah.
of what it actually takes to be an entrepreneur, and like you said, when whether I was on my honeymoon or in Europe,
Mhm.
or I've done, I've gone through so many like all-nighters that it's scary to say that it's what shaped me.
Mm-hmm.
It's what made me me.
Mm-hmm.
It's what, the sense of being able to go to sleep really late and wake up really early to get the deliverable done,
Right.
to review, to send out the series of emails,
Sure.
or to connect with a partner or
Yeah.
vendor, or managing a team. I'm at the end of the day, I have a master's in communication. I don't have an MBA, so
Yeah.
everything was I would say a learning
process.
process, right? And managing a small team has been an amazing learning process to be the entrepreneur that I am today as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, I see that the happier your team is, the happier the business is,
Yeah.
and it goes back to that the ethic of whatever you give, you get,
Yeah.
right?
No, for sure.
And I really believe in that. Truly believe in that.
I wanted to bring up a story or like a moment in time that I remember this
Mm.
because I was at TD Bank and we were at a networking event together. I don't know if you remember this, right?
Whereabouts?
It must have been downtown Toronto
Okay.
somewhere, right?
Oh, those Kushali networking
Yeah,
events? I see.
networking event.
one of
Yeah,
those.
yeah.
Okay.
So we met and you told me like I'm starting my own thing. I got a spot at WeWork and you were trying to grow this thing from the ground up. Like it
Mhm.
was really just you at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And then I heard that you had tore your Achilles
Mm-hmm.
pretty quickly after that or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you were like, screw that, I'm still coming to these events. how did that happen? Like, and how do you keep things
You have a
afloat?
good memory. You have a very good
Yeah,
memory, actually.
man.
It's crazy. I remember very vividly now that I tore my Achilles in 2019. And it was, I would say that, I was part of the incubator at WeWork downtown. That it's called WeWork Labs. And, man, I tore my Achilles playing basketball. And I had a series of conferences lined up 3 weeks after.
And for you, that means business.
Man,
That's like,
it's my bread and butter. When I meet people and I can speak to them about who I am, my service, my team, that's where they can understand what I can provide them.
Yeah.
And really understand my passion as well, right?
Mhm.
Like, and I'm like, I had a big event in Calgary, and it was one of the big. It's a yearly conference that happens, and I didn't want to miss it. I had my flight book, my everything, my hotel, and had like a Banff trip booked and all that. So I'm like, whatever for the Banff trip, but the conference was very important to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I went to, because I was in an air cast at that point, and I went to see my doctor, and I asked him, listen, I have to go. I have to make it. He's like, it's not good. It's not, if anything happens, it's risky, but at the end of the day, you got to do what you got to do. And the moment he said that, I'm like, all right, let's go.
No way. So you're at the conference limping around?
Yes. In an air cast, in crutches.
No way.
Yeah, man. Oh. I did it. But you see, that's the other thing of, that's what it takes.
Yeah.
It's part of the entrepreneurial journey. And I remember very well, I made some business on that conference.
No way.
Business that lasted a few years. I worked with a few pharmacies out in Calgary.
Yeah.
That I helped them with their social media, and they're working with some projects in Quebec. So I was able to help them, and I'm very glad I made it to that conference.
Yeah. Was that the most difficult part of being an entrepreneur, or difficult part of your experience with Serv so far, or has there been something that's been worse?
Challenging.
Yeah.
Wise, I think. I'm from Montreal, right? Born and raised. I'm a diehard Quebecois. I think one of the challenging parts was moving to Toronto. Leaving my comfort zone, leaving my closest friends and family. Yeah. But it was also that leap of faith that I needed. Obviously, I did my undergrad in Waterloo. I did my master's in Ottawa. So, Toronto was very familiar to me. I have friends and family here as well. But my brother moved out here in 2016, and 2017, I was a year and a half, 2 years into Serv, and I realized that, I had some contracts in Toronto, and I was already coming into town every, I would say, 2-3 weeks for on-site projects, and I think I was growing. I was seeing a big opportunity in the market in Toronto, intercepting those agency looking for for partners in Quebec, right? But being already in Ontario, being already in Toronto, where national, I would say, headquarters are already based, right? So I saw an opportunity, and my brother was here, and my cousins were here. So I told myself, this is a great time to kind of fly on my own wings, leave the nest at home. I was fresh out of school, fresh out of starting my own business. Took a leap of faith, came here with the sense that I had at least 2-3 clients that I can, bank on and work with, and really, hope that I can, work with them for a long time to pay my rent or whatever it was. For sure. Pay my rent that we work. There's so many small things that come along with being a business. Yeah. Having a business, and it's crazy how the experience really teaches you. Yeah. What you're made of. For sure.
Because you left your comfort zone, right? You left where you call it home for like almost ever.
Right? Yeah, it was crazy. It was tough because I'm very close. I'm still close with my friends in Montreal, and my Montreal nature is always there, and I miss Montreal, but I'm very comfortable where I am, very happy where I am. Yeah. It's really instilled that sense of entrepreneurship being in Toronto. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And it let me fly on my own wings. I didn't see the step under me, but I still took the leap. Right. Yeah. Wicked. And now you've become a diehard Toronto Maple Leafs fan, right? That's the case, right? That will never, ever, ever happen. Ever. You can put that on my tombstone. Yeah. Actually.
Try, man. Try. No, man, it's really cool to see your story and kind of follow you in various different ways along the way, and throughout the course of you meeting your spouse. Yeah. Right? Because we reconnected after that.
We did.
And, like, how did you explain to someone coming into your life for the first time, look, dude, like, I'm an entrepreneur. There's going to be good days and bad days, but, if you're along for the ride, let's do this.
Yeah. I think the beauty of my relationship with Zara is that we never really saw our profession have anything to do with us.
Nice.
You know what I mean? Like, whether Our relationship was based on who we were for each other.
Yeah.
Who we were. I really loved her for who she was, not for Zara the recruiter at York region.
Yeah.
And be confident in who I am also, right? And not having less of a worry to, having somebody that kind of, pressures me. Not at all. Like Zara supports me to the fullest, in a sense where it allows me to be me to the fullest.
Yeah. And you kind of need to do that running your business, because you're running your team, you're managing clients, you're managing potential clients. Like you have to be authentically you, because I think, like, from what I'm learning, not only from this conversation, but all the conversations that I've had doing this, is that what people are attracted to is the authenticity of the person that you're going to work with. Not necessarily like the product at the end of the day. The product is there, but there are probably other products that are very similar.
Agreed.
But it's my connection to Rahim that's going to make me go back to Serv.
And actually, I know how it started. It's weird, but it started from me translating for barbershops, man, in Montreal to literally translating and interpreting for Google and Facebook on international board director calls.
So cool.
And I think that was another, a very rewarding thing, is being, in such part of such big projects, what I mean? And being able to, for instance, go to a conference in Mexico and being the interpreter for one of my clients out there. And I was there for a conference, and it was unbelievable having that experience. At the end of the day, is being part of a bigger impact. Yeah. When it comes to something that is overseen for a lot of people.
For sure.
At the end of the day, Quebec is still the second biggest market in Canada. Yeah. And a lot of people tend to forget that. Yeah. And put it aside because they don't want to deal with the French bureaucracy or the administrative nonsense associated with Quebec and their language laws, which are important at the end of the day. That's what makes Quebec different. Right. 8 million people out of North America, which is 400 million people. Having the first language of North America still survive because of legislation, right? And the only place in the world where Starbucks is not called Starbucks is in Quebec. It's called Café Starbucks.
No way.
Yeah, man.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
A bit. Yeah.
Yeah. I've always known of the pride that Quebec has, right? And it's cool to see that resonate through your business. Like that's it's wonderful that you're able to bring that localized knowledge to them. So I'm going to take you back a little bit. Whether it was you starting Serv or whether it was you doing some of your first translation gigs, like in the Montreal area for barbershops, whatever it may be. Now that it's been over 9 years, what would you tell yourself then?
Oh my God. Don't be scared. Yeah. Yeah. I think when you're an entrepreneur, there's a sense of your personal brand and the sense of being able to push that to its limit. Not being scared of what people think. Not being scared of if you're doing the right thing. Yeah. Overthinking certain things, whether it's reaching out to certain clients that you think, they're never going to give me, a second of their time, right? But you have to try. I think a sense of persistence, I think I grew with that. Yeah. I grew with that. I started, and I'm happy that the grind was real because it kind of made me who I am today. Yeah. And proudly say that I work with the brands that I work with today because I've worked with the smallest brands before. For sure. Right. And it kind of took that sense of starting from the bottom. Yeah. To grow and learn from your experience. I've always been real. We talked about that, right? For sure. Remember when I was in Austin, we talked 100%. About being real when you're an entrepreneur. Yeah. Right. The sense of responsibility, the sense of knowing that tomorrow is not guaranteed. Yeah. Tomorrow, when you're an entrepreneur, tomorrow's paycheck is not guaranteed. The next month's paycheck's not guaranteed. You can have the biggest dreams, but it's kind of going to be associated with your confidence and your sense of pursuit of building new business, new partnerships, long nights, and for sure, that's what it takes. It's really nice to hear you say you just got to be real to the process, because a big part of this discussion, this podcast, talking to people is to get people to, one,
not only feel comfortable with the idea of entrepreneurship and potentially look at it as a real option for them, but them to really understand what it actually takes, you know, and the fact that there aren't going to be days that are going to be, you know, good. There are going to be days that are going to be difficult, right? And it's from stories like yours that people get a true understanding of what that life is like, right?
I couldn't agree more.
So I appreciate you being honest and open on this. Dude, thank you so much for sharing that story and for sharing your entire story, because I think that after having done this for 9 years, you have solid perspective on what it really is like to be an entrepreneur.
Thank you.
So thanks for being on Behind the Business.
Thanks for having me on.
Appreciate you being here. Thanks to everyone else who's joined this podcast on this episode of Behind the Business. I'm Faheem Savja.
Rahim Karmali.
And we'll hopefully see you on the next episode of Behind the Business.
Thank you for joining us on Behind the Business. I hope today's story left you a little inspired and maybe one step closer to your own entrepreneurial dreams. Behind every business, there's a person with a vision and a story worth telling. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, or share it with a friend who may need a little inspiration too. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep building, and keep listening. This is Faheem Savja, signing off from Behind the Business.